California often brings to mind sunny beaches, luxury, and Hollywood glamour, but hidden within this wealthy state is a city where reality feels like a nightmare. In parts of Oakland, gangs dominate, drug trade flourishes, and homelessness is overwhelming. Streets are filled with burned-out cars and makeshift shelters, while robberies and gunfights are common. Once thriving, Oakland now faces a harsh reality that rarely appears in tourist ads. Eagle Discovery brings you the untold truth of this city. The City of Oakland. California is often associated with sunny beaches, iconic landmarks, and the flourishing tech industry, especially in places like Silicon Valley. But there is another side to the state, one that is far less glamorous. Oakland, located just across the bay from its wealthier and more famous neighbor, San Francisco, reveals a much more complex reality. The city is battling some of the most significant urban issues in the state, struggles that have persisted for decades despite its proximity to wealth and innovation. Oakland is a city in turmoil, one where prosperity has ebbed and flowed throughout its history, leaving behind stark contrasts that are difficult to ignore. The city has become a symbol of urban decay, where crime and violence are everyday occurrences, often overwhelming local communities. Gang violence has overtaken certain neighborhoods, and criminal organizations have deep roots in the city's infrastructure. For many, these issues are not just an abstraction but a daily reality, with visible signs of distress in the form of homelessness, poverty, and rising crime rates. The impact of Oakland's struggles can be seen in its streets, often littered with abandoned vehicles and makeshift shelters housing those with no other option. The contrast between the well-maintained parts of the city and the neglected neighborhoods is jarring. In some areas, it's not uncommon to find families living in tents, struggling to survive amidst the backdrop of urban decay. The psychological toll is equally apparent. Fear and stress are part of daily life, with residents dealing with frequent armed robberies, shootings, and other violent incidents. What was once a bustling urban hub now has a reputation for being a place where survival is the primary concern, and violence is a constant threat. The streets of Oakland tell the story of a city that has lost its way. In many areas, the sound of gunfire and the wail of police sirens are so familiar that they seem almost like background noise. These once vibrant communities have become a war zone in many respects, where citizens are left to fend for themselves amidst overwhelming hardship. The rise and fall of Oakland. To understand the present-day struggles of Oakland, it's essential to examine its history and the factors that led to the city's current condition. In the 19th century, Oakland was a bustling industrial center, strategically located as a vital link in the nation's rail network and a hub for manufacturing. During this time, the city grew rapidly, and its strategic position played a critical role in the development of California's economy. By the mid-20th century, Oakland had established itself as an industrial powerhouse, with a booming economy based on shipyards, factories, and trade. World War II further solidified Oakland's position as a key economic player. Its shipyards and factories were critical to the war effort, and thousands of workers, many of whom were African American migrants from the segregated South, found new opportunities in the city. During this period, Oakland earned the nickname the Industrial City, and its economy flourished as it became a symbol of opportunity for many. However, by the 1970s, the city began to face significant challenges. The decline of American manufacturing, known as deindustrialization, hit Oakland particularly hard. Factories shuttered, jobs disappeared, and unemployment rates soared. The once booming industrial base crumbled, and the gap between the city's rich and poor grew more pronounced. It was during this period that the seeds of Oakland's modern-day issues were sown, as the city transitioned from a symbol of prosperity to one of decline. The 1960s and 1970s were also marked by significant political and social movements, with Oakland at the center. The Black Panther Party, founded in 1966, emerged as a powerful response to racial inequality and the systemic oppression faced by African Americans. The party advocated for self-defense, social justice, and political power for the Black community. Their activism was a direct response to the social unrest, poverty, and inequality that plagued Oakland at the time. As the 1980s and 1990s approached, Oakland's problems worsened. The crack epidemic hit the city hard, exacerbating the rise of violent gangs and escalating crime. Entire neighborhoods were devastated by the effects of drugs and gang violence, and the city's crime rate soared. Oakland, once a beacon of opportunity, became synonymous with despair, further solidifying its reputation as a city struggling to overcome a long history of economic hardship, social inequality, and political unrest. The inequality gap. California is often associated with sunny beaches, iconic landmarks, and the flourishing tech industry, especially in places like Silicon Valley. But there is another side to the state, one that is far less glamorous. Oakland, located just across the bay from its wealthier and more famous neighbor, San Francisco, reveals a much more complex reality. The city is battling some of the most significant urban issues in the state, struggles that have persisted for decades despite its proximity to wealth and innovation. Oakland is a city in turmoil, one where prosperity has ebbed and flowed throughout its history, leaving behind stark contrasts that are difficult to ignore. The city has become a symbol of urban decay, where crime and violence are everyday occurrences, often overwhelming local communities. Gang violence has overtaken certain neighborhoods, and criminal organizations have deep roots in the city's infrastructure. For many, these issues are not just an abstraction but a daily reality, with visible signs of distress in the form of homelessness, poverty, and rising crime rates. In some parts of Oakland, the rise in property values has meant that those who have lived in the area for decades can no longer afford to stay. Renters, in particular, face exorbitant prices that leave them struggling to make ends meet. With wages failing to keep pace with the rising cost of living, many find themselves in a precarious situation. For some, this means choosing between paying rent or buying food. For others, it means being pushed closer to the edge of homelessness. The situation in Oakland highlights the broader issues of inequality and the devastating consequences of a city unable to meet the needs of its most vulnerable populations. Many of Oakland's poorest residents find themselves living on the edge, with little chance of escaping their circumstances. A job loss, a medical emergency, or an unexpected expense can push them into homelessness, a harsh reality that far too many face in the city today. The high cost of living has also placed immense pressure on public services. The roads are filled with potholes, garbage collection is unreliable, and schools are underfunded, leading to a cycle of neglect and disenfranchisement that disproportionately affects Oakland's low-income communities. Public services are stretched thin, and the city's most vulnerable residents are the ones who bear the brunt of this failure. For many residents, the question is no longer about whether they can afford to live in Oakland, but whether they can afford to stay. The dream of a stable life in the city has become a distant hope, and the battle for survival has taken center stage. Without significant changes to address these inequalities, Oakland will continue to struggle to find a way out of its present crisis. The divide between the rich and poor in the city is not just an economic issue, it's a matter of survival. The high cost of living. Oakland's living costs are now some of the highest in the country, with housing prices and rents soaring far above the national average. The median home price in Oakland exceeds $700,000, and that's for a modest property, nothing resembling the luxurious homes that are typical of California's coastal cities. For those renting, the situation is equally dire, with the average apartment in downtown Oakland costing around $2,500 per month, nearly double the national median rent. These costs have forced many individuals and families into a precarious existence, where survival is based on making difficult choices every day. Utilities such as electricity and water are equally inflated, adding to the financial burden. As a result, many people are living paycheck to paycheck, with little to no ability to save or plan for the future. The rapid increase in homelessness is a direct result of these exorbitant costs. Oakland's homelessness population has surged by 130% in the past decade, making the city a focal point of the broader housing crisis in California. The high cost of living doesn't equate to improved services. While wealthy neighborhoods thrive, poorer areas continue to face crumbling infrastructure and inconsistent public services. The city's public transportation system is underfunded, garbage collection is irregular, and public health services are insufficient. As rent continues to rise, more residents are being pushed out, contributing to the growing exodus from Oakland in search of more affordable places to live. The homelessness crisis. The homelessness crisis in Oakland is one of the most pressing and visible challenges facing the city today. Driving through certain parts of the city can feel like entering a dystopian reality, where the streets are littered with tents and makeshift shelters, and the sounds of life in the city are muffled by the overwhelming presence of those without homes. the encampments have become so widespread that entire neighborhoods have been overtaken by people living in precarious conditions. Wood Street, once a bustling industrial hub, has transformed into one of the largest homeless camps in California. The area, now home to thousands of people, has been repurposed by those struggling to survive. Makeshift tents, dilapidated trailers, and rickety wooden structures provide little protection from the elements. Communities have formed under overpasses and along railway tracks, creating a sense of isolation from the wealthier parts of the city. The official count reports that more than 5,000 people in Oakland are living in these deplorable conditions, but the true number is likely far higher, as many individuals and families remain uncounted. The shortage of affordable housing and the exorbitant cost of living have pushed many people into homelessness, creating an impossible situation for those affected. The city's response to the crisis has been inadequate, and the lack of resources and services for the homeless only worsens the situation. With no place to go and few options for assistance, many people find themselves caught in a hopeless cycle, living on the streets with no way out. The streets of Oakland have become increasingly dangerous, overcrowded, and unsanitary, making life even more difficult for the homeless. The ongoing neglect of this issue by local authorities has led to a growing sense of despair among both the homeless population and the general public, as the city struggles to provide effective solutions to such a complex problem. Crime on the rise. Oakland's crime rate has become one of the most alarming aspects of the city's decline, and the situation seems to be getting worse with each passing year. In 2023, robberies surged by nearly 40% compared to the previous year, with violent crime reaching levels that have made many residents feel unsafe even in broad daylight. Armed robberies and gang-related violence have become commonplace in many neighborhoods, turning parts of the city into crime hotspots. One of the most concerning trends has been the rise of crash-and-grab robberies. In these incidents, thieves steal vehicles, smash into storefronts, and loot businesses in a matter of minutes. The frequency and boldness of these robberies have created a climate of fear, particularly for small business owners who cannot afford the high cost of insurance or security measures to protect their stores. For many businesses, these smash-and-grab crimes are not only financially devastating, but also contribute to the larger sense of lawlessness gripping the city. The growing crime problem in Oakland is compounded by the city's struggles with its police force. Budget cuts, early retirements, and a lack of leadership have left the department underfunded and understaffed. As a result, response times have slowed, and in some cases, residents report waiting up to an hour for police to arrive after an emergency call. This lack of urgency from law enforcement only fuels the sense of insecurity felt by Oakland residents, making it difficult for people to feel safe even in their own homes or neighborhoods. Prostitution and human exploitation. Oakland's issues with prostitution and human trafficking have reached horrific levels, with certain neighborhoods, like International Boulevard and San Antonio, becoming hotspots for exploitation. What was once a crime hidden in the shadows has now become a highly visible and disturbing part of Oakland's streetscape. Women, including minors, are often seen standing semi-naked on street corners in broad daylight, waiting to be approached by potential buyers. This open display of prostitution takes place in front of schools, grocery stores, and bus stops, exposing children and families to the horrors of human trafficking. Pimps openly patrol the streets, controlling the women they exploit, while drivers slow down to negotiate deals. Local residents report disturbing encounters with these criminals, including aggressive behavior and even attempted abductions. The violence and degradation that accompany this type of exploitation are undeniable, and the system that perpetuates it has been difficult to dismantle. Human trafficking in Oakland is not confined to just a few areas, but is spread across the city, contributing to the overall sense of lawlessness. Despite ongoing efforts to address this crisis, the visible presence of prostitution and trafficking speaks to the scale of the issue. Poverty, a lack of law enforcement resources, and the erosion of community safety have all played a role in perpetuating the cycle of exploitation. The drug crisis. The drug epidemic in Oakland is an ever-growing problem, exacerbating the city's already dire situation. The streets are filled with addicts, and the drug trade thrives in the background. While opioids like fentanyl and heroin are problems that affect cities across the U.S., Oakland has seen an especially sharp rise in methamphetamine use in recent years. In 2017, methamphetamine-related deaths in Alameda County, where Oakland is located, were around 10 per year. By 2022, that number had skyrocketed to over 160, underscoring the devastating impact of the drug's spread. Meth has become incredibly cheap and widely available, making it accessible to a large number of people struggling with addiction. For the homeless population, methamphetamine often serves as a means of survival. Many use it to stay awake during the night to avoid the dangers of being robbed or assaulted while sleeping on the streets. However, what begins as a defense mechanism quickly spirals into full-blown addiction, leading to a vicious cycle of dependency and self-destruction. The impact of this drug crisis extends beyond just the addicts themselves. The increased presence of methamphetamine has led to more erratic, violent, and dangerous behavior on the streets. This has made already unsafe neighborhoods even more hazardous, creating an environment of fear and instability. The city's social services, which are already stretched thin, are struggling to meet the needs of those affected by addiction, and the result is a growing public health and safety crisis. This is the hidden side of Oakland that few talk about. Surprised by what you've learned? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoy exploring places from an unconventional perspective, don't forget to follow. There's still so much that conventional tourism won't show you. Thanks for staying until the end. See you next time.